Morning class. Today's Thursday, September 24th, and this is today's problem of the day. Today we're going to be converting decimals. Here on this box, we've provided a few examples for you on the three different forms of converting that you're going to be doing today. Our first example is you're going to be going from a decimal to a fraction. Our second example is going from a fraction to a decimal. And then our third example is also going from decimal to a fraction. On the first example here, we're going from 0 wholes and 8/10ths. And the way to do so is simply ensure that you put the numerator representing the decimal and your denominator needs to be in the correct place value. For this example, this is in the tenths. And because there's nothing in the hundreds, then you only utilize the tenths. For the second example, as you can tell, your numerator is a 5 and your denominator is 100, and knowing that being 100, that's going to be a big clue to ensure that your decimal is at 0 wholes. There's no tenth here, so you leave it blank, and then you put the 5 in the correct hundreds place value. And then the third example, you actually have 1300ths, which means you do have a number in your tenths and you also have a number in the hundreds. But because of that, because your decimal representation ends in the hundreds place, your fraction becomes 13 over 100. So we're going to pause it there for a few seconds. We're going to give you guys about 6 to 8 minutes to work on converting these two problems. All we're asking you to do is to give us your final answer here for all 5 of these problems, and then give us your final answers here for these next 10 problems. Okay, we'll see you back in 6 to 8 minutes.
So I'm gonna check with you, and while I'm doing this, solving these problems, these 5 decimal problems, check yourself to see you did it the right way. Okay, so I'm gonna rate it first. 7/10 is in the 10, so I will put the numerator as 7 and 10 underneath as the denominator. 8 is in the hundreds, tenths, hundreds, so again, numerator is gonna be 8, the denominator is gonna be 100. 800ths. 45, so I had to get both of them. It's in the tenths and 5 is in the hundreds, so ended in the hundreds, so it's 45 hundredths. Number 4, 3 is in the tenths, so numerator is 3 tenths. Finally, the number 5 is the 9 is in the hundredths place. Tenths, hundreds, so this fraction is going to be 9 hundredths. Check yourself and correct yourself and see if you did it the right way.
Okay, now for the last 5, 6 through 10, I'm starting with a fraction. I need to convert to a decimal. Start with my decimal point. Now this, I'm still struggling, so let's refer to our examples. So I know when my denominator is hundredth, I see 2 places, tenths and hundreds. So 4 must mean there are no tenths, but I have 4 hundredths. And I have 0 wholes. 7, number 7, start with my decimal point. There are no whole numbers. Put that 0 in the ones place. Tenths, so looking back at my example, I see a tenth has 1 place after the decimal. 5 tenths. Number 8, read it, 57 hundredths. Okay, now remember, when I saw 100 earlier, I had 2 places after the decimal. 57 hundredths. And there's still 0 whole numbers. Number 9, read it first, so 1/10. No whole numbers. And 10, There's only one place after the decimal, one in. Last, number 10. I'll read it first. 100th. Decimal, no whole numbers. That's all. 100 has 2 zeros in it. So 2 places after the decimal. No tenths, just 100.
All right, guys. So now that we got a chance to take a look at the problem of the day and how to convert some of those decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals, we're going to apply that by taking a quick practice test. We do have an actual test coming up on Friday, and we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. And to do so, we're going to be talking about texting expectations and the norms in order for all of us to be successful and have a great testing environment to ensure that you are in a quiet place at home, in a place where there's very little distractions. If you can, try to find yourself a room where you're isolated or by yourself to ensure that just there's no noise around you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the texting expectations and how these are going to help you stay focused and stay on task. So the first expectation is making sure that you keep your camera on at all times. And this is important because in order for us to keep track of attendance, as we look at these recordings, it lets us know that you are participating in the exam. If your camera is off, you will not get attendance and it'll be counted as an absence. So make sure that your camera's on. It's the only way that we ensure that you're on the computer, you're by the computer, and that you're doing it by yourself. The second expectation is to make sure that you stay muted. That means that, from your Chromebook or your device, you make sure that you press the mute button and that you keep it on at all times. I know typically, from time to time, we'll ask you to share. And at that time, then you can turn it back on. So please make sure that you stay muted. And this is important because it's going to minimize also the distractions and make sure that your classmates stay focused and they're only listening to our voice and our presentations. The third expectation is to make sure that you are in a scholar position. Again, going back to the norms for virtual learning, that means that you're seated in a chair or a couch or somewhere where you're in an upright position. Please make sure that you're not laying down in a bed, you're not laying down in a couch, or that you're not in a position that's going to make you sleepy or make you tired. So again, if you can find a table in your dining table or a small desk or maybe a coffee table somewhere where you can be seated in an upright position, that's going to help you out a lot, and it's going to just create a better testing environment for you. Okay, Mr. Rispy's going to go over the next 3.
So the very first one, keep your camera on. Another reason it's important, if you have a question, we want you to stay muted, but so we can see you, since we'll see you the whole time, just raise your hand. We'll be watching everyone the whole time, so as soon as you raise your hand, we'll call on you. You can either put it in the chat, or you can briefly turn your microphone on, and we'll take your question. So, another part of the reason we want you to keep your camera on, we want you to be counted, be present, and we want to know it's only you doing this work, right? Whenever we go over the test, we give you your feedback, we want to know what you know so far about fractions, decimals, converting, expanded notation. It doesn't matter what your mom, dad, brother, sister know because they won't have to learn other math lessons. So if you're working independently, we could see what we're doing well with and what we need more practice on through the rest of the year. So on that note, for us to see your best work, it's really important to take your time. If you rush, that's a quick way to make little mistakes that really don't show how well you know fractions, decimals, and expanded notation. Lastly, we want you, and we'll demonstrate this in a moment, solve your problem on a piece of paper before you look at the answers. So read the question, read it 2 or 3 times so you really understand what it's asking, and before you look at A, B, C, D, start showing your solution on your paper. Then once you've solved it as much as possible, then you can start to check your answer choices and see which makes sense that matches your work the best.